Okay, this is lesson 9.3, the surface area of cylinders. It's on page 370 in your textbook if you're following along with that. And it says the surface area of a cylinder is the sum of the areas of the bases and the lateral surface. Just like we were doing prisms. So here we go. We can use our Prism formula. The surface area of a prism was the base plus the base. Those are the area of the bases. Plus the perimeter of the base times the height. Now, we do have to remember we're dealing with circles, so the circles, period, maybe a comma. So, when we find the area of the base, we're going to use the area of a circle, which is pi r squared. Okay, remember pi r squared. We're going to keep them in terms of pi, and the r is the radius. Okay, so sometimes they'll give us the diameter, and we'll have to cut it in half. And sometimes they give us the radius, and then we just use that. Okay, so let's look at an example here. Here's the first example they give us. This little guy out here. So the surface area of a prism base, so we find the area of the base. Remember, it's pi r squared. So pi times radius squared, and the radius is 4. So the area of the circle equals pi r squared, which in this case will be pi 4 squared. And remember, 4 squared does not mean 4 times 2. It's not 8. It means 4 times 4, or 16. So for the area of one of the circles, it's going to be 16 pi. Don't forget the pi. So 16 pi. The other base will also be 16 pi. They have to be the same. Plus, now the perimeter. Remember, we don't call it a perimeter when it's a circle. We call it something that starts with a C. Circumference. And circumference is 2 pi r. So remember that it's a rectangle that goes around the circles. That's what makes the cylinder there. And this distance that goes across the top of the rectangle is the exact same as the distance to go around this circle. Kind of like if we had a soup can and this was the label. So that label fits all the way around the can. It's the same distance as going around that circle. So if we find the circumference of the circle, that's the same as finding the length of this rectangle. Well, the circumference of a circle is 2 pi r, and we already said the radius is 4. So circumference, I'll do it down here, equals 2 pi r equals 2 pi 4. And this time it is 2 times 4, which is 8. So 8 pi. That is that length, 8 pi. That's the perimeter or circumference because it's a circle. 8 pi times the height. And the height here, it's the distance between the circles. It's that 3. Now we have to do our multiplication first. 8 pi times 3 is 24 pi. So we have 24 pi plus 16 pi plus 16 pi. Well, that's convenient. They're all pi terms. So I can actually add all of these. 24 and 16 is 40, plus 16 more is 56 pi millimeters, and it's squared. 56 pi millimeters squared. 56 pi is what they got. Very good. Well, now they gave us 2 examples we can work out. Let's see if I got a little paper here. Here's one. And we'll start with our formula. Area of a prism. I'm calling this a prism. It's really a cylinder. You can put area of a cylinder equals the area of the base plus the area of the base plus the perimeter times the height. Now, because it's a circle, you could put a C in there for circumference, but I like it to stay the same formula because this is really just a circular prism. And to get the area of the base, remember that's a circle. So the area of a circle is pi r squared. In this case, it's pi. The radius is 6 from the center to the side. So 6 squared, which is 36 pi. That's a tall pi. So 36 pi for one base. Of course, the other base is also 36 pi. And now the circumference, the distance around there, circumference equals 2 pi r. 2 pi r, which is 2 pi 6. I guess I do want that up here. There we go. 2 pi 6, which is 12 pi. So that's the circumference, or the perimeter. So I put that in here. 12 pi times the height. Well, what's the height of this? Oh, it's that 9 right there. Now I have to make sure I do my multiplication first. 9 times 12 pi is 108 pi plus 36 pi plus 36 more pi. And 36 and 36 is 72. And 72 and 108 is 180 pi. And it's yards. And it's yards squared because we're doing area. 180 pi r, pi yards squared. To do the other problem over here, this one's laying on its side. Don't get all confused. It's still the same kind of a problem. Number 2. Area equals base plus perimeter times height. The base is a circle, so pi r squared. And this time radius is 3, so pi 3 squared, which would be 9 pi. Hopefully you weren't thinking 6 pi because 3 squared means 3 times 3. 9 pi again for that one. Now the circumference, and remember circumference is 2 pi r, 2 pi 3, and 2 pi 3 is 6 pi, times the height. Now this doesn't look like the height because it's going along the bottom here, but remember the height is the distance between the two bases, and the bases are these circles. Just because somebody came and knocked this over doesn't change what the height is. If your dad was laying on the couch, you wouldn't go over with a ruler and say, my dad is 20 inches tall because his belly is sticking 20 inches up from the couch. You would still measure him from feet to head, even though he was laying down, to tell how tall he was. Well, same with this, just because it's laying down, you still measure it from base to base to get its height. So it's 18. 6 times 18 is 60 plus 48, 108 pi plus 9 pi plus 9 pi. 9 and 9 is 18 plus 108 is 126 pi centimeters squared. Now sometimes when it says finding the surface area, they only want the area of the rectangle that goes around it. That's the lateral face, remember, because it's the side face. So we'll use the same kind of formula, except what we don't want are these two bases. So we would just want the lateral surface area. So it's still a surface area, but we have to remember we're not counting the bases. In this case, it says how much paper is used for the label on the can of peas. Just the going around. We don't put any paper on the top or on the bottom, of course, just the lateral face. So now we're just going to do that portion of the formula. Remember the perimeter of this circle is its circumference, which is 2 pi r. So it would be circumference equals 2 pi r, and the radius is 1. So 2 times pi times 1. 2 times 1 is just 2, so 2 pi. So that's the distance going around there. So the area equals the perimeter times the height, and we just found out the perimeter is 2 pi, times the height, which is 2, and we get a total surface area of 4 pi inches squared. That's how much paper they would need. At this point, I would recommend, now that you've viewed the lesson, is to go and work on the odds on page 372, checking those answers in the back of the book, and then go right over and do the journal page 196, which is the journal page for lesson 9.3. Have an awesome day.